goal of this presentation today is to better understand the idea of cultural shock inside a company, especially in China and the American culture, which are quite different one from the other. So this work also aims to help managers of today and tomorrow like you to lead a multicultural team in order to use, apply and increase to the best the skills and qualities of each for the benefit of a collective work.
In the first part, we will talk about the differences between managing the American and the Chinese culture. And in the second part, we're going to focus on how to help managers lead the multicultural teams and about the advantages and disadvantages of a multicultural company, along with a few examples of the big companies that have succeeded with a multicultural management. And before we start the presentation, here's a short video explaining about the difference between the American and the Chinese culture. Thank you.
Let's see what's the differences between Chinese and American culture on workplace. The US culture is based on one principle, liberty and justice for all. Superiors are always accessible and managers rely on individual employees and teams for their expertise. Along with this, communication is informal, direct, and participative. And in Chinese state-owned companies, there is a few defense against power abuse by superiors. For the individualism and collectivism, it's difficult to develop a deep friendship in these two countries. Americans are accustomed to doing business or interacting with people they don't know well. And China is a highly collectivist culture, where people act in the interest of the group and not necessarily of themselves. China and the US are all masculine countries. In China and the US, their society are driven by competition, achievement, and success. The difference is that many Chinese will sacrifice family and leisure priorities to work. And these two countries are all uncertainty avoidance countries. There's a fair degree of acceptance for new ideas, innovative products, and a willingness to try something new or different. Chinese adherence to laws and rules may be flexible to suit the actual situation. American business measure their performance on a short-term basis, with profit and loss statements being issued on a quarterly basis. China is a very pragmatic culture. People believe that truth depends very much on situation, context, and time.
So after these short videos that you've seen of the Chinese and American management way, we're going to start the second part, which is how managers must lead with those nationalities. So first, what is important is talking about calibrate, which is as you do get to know your team members, it's important to vary communication styles. Some region may have reputation for being direct, like the American way, and more in kind of differential way. So as you get to know your team members, be ready to adapt your own communication so that different styles don't get in the way of doing good work. As you get to know your team members, you can begin to address differences to overcome differences. So as we know that the American way is more directly, so you come from China, how do you think people need to manage the teamwork and the communication?
Like in China, it's different like in the US. In China, when you talk to the employees, it's not good to in a direct way. Sometimes you have to say that in another way. For example, as an HR, sometimes if you want to fire someone, you have to say something like, you did pretty well on your job actually, but something like this. And then but maybe if you, I think it's better for you to go to another company, something like this. You can't say that you didn't do very well on your work. I think this is Chinese, yeah.
So okay, talking about the prep time, like I know everyone is not comfortable sitting in meetings and talking, because people come from different nationalities like Chinese and Americans. Like if you're together sitting in a meeting, I know like English can be a little bit of difficult for Chinese, well Americans it's quite native. So while in a meeting, Americans might be a little responsive, but from what I've seen, that Chinese people tend to be a little silent. But then like how do you think, like how much time do you think like would be required for you, like after a meeting, to prepare and stuff?
Usually we have a meeting per week, and before that, I think that we have to prepare well for the meeting. It's like a weekly meeting, so
Okay.
yes.
Then let's come to the third argument, which is monitor team dynamic. So, as a team leader, you need to be aware of those roles people play on your team. On multicultural team, communication challenges can come up, and it's important to make sure that they don't become problematic. So, if you see signs of a project stalling or more interpersonal conflicts, it's time to step in. Having empathy for each of the team members is important to avoid escalating to the conflicts. And actually, it is the same for the American and Chinese way. So, I mean, there is no typical things for the both nationalities.
So, well, talking about breaking down barriers, well, I know Chinese and Americans are quite different, and it's quite difficult to integrate. So, I mean, like, to break down barriers, I guess I should put you both in the same team so that you guys work together, you guys get to know each other, knowing people, outside, meeting them outside for maybe for a coffee or lunch, so that you guys can break down barriers, get to know each other, integrate in different cultures. So, I guess that should be a good thing. And the last one I would talk about is avoiding stereotypes. It's quite certain that managers sometimes they tend to stereotype. Chinese people, like they only work. That's what is perceived about them. Like they don't really have a personal or social life. Well, Americans, it's tend to be like they work hard and they party hard. But that's not really the case. Well, from what I've seen, like Chinese people, even they like to have fun at least. So, well, I think we should quite avoid stereotyping people, because it's really not good. Giving all the work to Chinese is not good, and the same goes for Americans as well.
So now that we talked about how to manage multiculturalism team, and especially American and Chinese way, do you think of any advantages and disadvantages of those multicultural teams? For example, the American.
Yeah. I think that with multiculturalism we can have some different perspectives. Like people from different cultures see the world in different ways. They have different priorities, belief in what's possible and appropriate. I think that's a big advantage, because when you need some out of the box thinking for your project, it's better to have some people come from different countries, and so I think it's really good for a company.
Yeah, so I agree with your argument, but the only problem is that with the different cultures, you can have different styles of collaboration. So sometimes you can have problems with the communication, for example, as we talked in the previous section. For the Asian culture, place a high value on developing a team consensus before moving forward. And for the US culture, it puts a greater emphasis on individual thought and action. So you'll need to balance the different styles to get the benefits of the different viewpoints. Do you have any arguments?
I think in my point of view, we're dealing with the customers from another culture or some other countries. It can present a lot of challenges and difficulties, and around the world, and many countries approach people differently, and having staff familiar with other cultures can give you a quick source for how to advise cross-cultural communication, and they may also be able to speak the customer's language. Also, sometimes it's a good way to avoid conflict. Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think like there's a downside for a multicultural workplace, that the same problems can come up again and again in the office. Like it may take like several time in guidance for all employees to learn each other's cultures, customs, and body languages as well.
Yeah. So there's one thing that you forgot to talk about, and it's the growth and learning, which is quite important in the companies, because if you manage your multicultural team well, your employees will all benefit of it, obviously. They'll learn more about other cultures and how to interact across cultural barriers. So that can be an asset in their careers, and they may also have a chance to practice any foreign languages they know, which is quite really important to stay fluent.
Maybe do you have some examples of companies that succeed in multiculturalism? I think that I heard about Coca-Cola. Maybe you can.
Yeah, yeah. Your question is really important because like that shows to you that multiculturalism things can be really important and succeed for some companies. So as you were talking about Coca-Cola, as they said that diversity is seen as more than just policies and practices. It is an integral part of who we are, so how they are in the company, and how they operate and how they see their future. So actually what Coca-Cola did is that they created a diversity education program that include diversity training and a diversity speaker series and a diversity library for all the people of different cultures coming to Coca-Cola for the work.
Well, to add to your question, like I have one more example. When I used to work in EY, EY Ernst & Young is one of the big fours, who started to assign full-time partner level leadership to their employees. I think they were the first ones of the big four to start this program, to create multicultural diversity. Like programs such as EY Launch have begun, which for like ethically like college diverse freshmen who have just graduated from college, transfer students, and so that they build awareness in terms of like accounting and professional services, and they create together and integrate as a profession.